Welcome to the chapter 260 review of Jujutsu Kaisen. I don't think much really needs to be said before we dive in. Whenever we get a Yuji and Todo masterclass, you just know the chapter is going to be fire. But that Gojo bit at the end of it could really make or break this chapter from being a 10 out of 10 and probably have a strong impact on the series. Obviously though, we'll just need to see where that goes next week. As I value both the time of you and I'll dive straight into the review, but before that I need to say the usual. If you enjoy content such as this, watch my content weekly, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe as it'll really help me out. Now, let's get into it. So the chapter begins right from where the previous one ended. As we finally see Todo finish unwrapping his arm, we see this thing.
You stop accusing Speed, he isn't laughing at you.
Look at him, he's laughing, bro! Oh my god, bro! My god,
laughing.
Alright, my fault. Yuji and Sukuna both see this thing as well and notice that it's a vibroslap. This is a percussion instrument that has a metal piece inside of the wooden box. This will vibrate when the ball on top of it hits the wooden box, and it produces a unique tone once vibrating. Once they finish this explanation, Todo just wastes no time. I mean, both he and Gege know we've been waiting forever for anything with this dude, so he just gets into the fight. Upon the activation of Todo's Boogie Woogie, we see that Yuji, Todo, and Sukuna are suspended, and it's said that as Todo would replace his left hand with the vibroslap, the activation condition would go from collapse to the collision of the metal piece in the box. And due to this, Todo can now activate Boogie Woogie about 50 times per second. And yes, this is as broken as you think it is. Yuji instantly picks up what's going on, and he points out that him, Sukuna, and Todo are all in a roulette, getting their pieces swapped many times over. As Todo hits the weight to activate his technique once more, Yuji and Sukuna waste no time and prepare to strike one another. And as they come face to face to exchange blows, Todo comes in and activates his newly evolved Boogie Woogie once more, swapping places fast enough for them to both land a strike on Sukuna at the same time. And as Sukuna recoils from the hit, it's explained that Todo would impose a binding vow that limits the number of switches relative to the number of collisions on his vibroslap. And due to this, Todo was able to expand the selection of multiple targets of his technique, and by proxy, enlarge its area of effect. After helping Yuta in the Lake Gosho colony, which is where Kenjaku was fighting Takaba, and Yuta snuck him after, Todo was able to make the adjustments to his technique and allow all sorcerers to escape the malevolent shrine. I think this confirms how Yuta was able to get around Kenjaku so fast when he first pulled up on him, so if Yuta had to fight Kenjaku, he probably would have won because he would have Todo alongside him to fight a weakened Kenjaku. Either way, this new technique is fire, and I'm glad to see Todo make a return. As Yuji and Todo run their normal play and surround Sukuna, he begins to think about how Todo is the most self-centered sorcerer and the hardest to break, stating that this man has showed up at the worst time possible. I've seen a couple people say this is a strange thing to say about Todo, but if you really look back at the story, not once has Todo's will ever wavered, let alone break. Todo really has always had an insanely strong spirit and will to try his best under any circumstances. So when Sukuna describes him as self-centered, he may mean this in like a Todo's gonna do whatever he desires no matter what you do to him or tell him kind of way, not that he only cares about himself. Anyways, Yuji and Todo continue to chase Sukuna as they jump toward him, and Todo swaps his in Sukuna's place, putting Sukuna mid-air and leaving him open for a strike. Todo jumps upward in an attempt to kick Sukuna, but Sukuna, despite being mid-air, is still able to dodge. Todo notices this and he's like, how the hell can this dude just move mid-air? I don't know if this confirms that he wasn't watching the fight in chapter 256 yet or something, cause Sukuna did this multiple times with Maki before landing the Black Flash on her a second time. After Todo misses this attack, Yuji would follow up by imbuing his curse energy into a rock and hurling it at Sukuna. And as it's about to reach him, we see Yuji take the place of the rock, landing a drop kick of sorts directly on Sukuna with Todo posing to the side, indicating that he has used this technique. Gege knows at this point that y'all need visual cues cause someone's bound to ask why Yuji's teleported. I swear we're gonna get one person saying this. Yuji and Sukuna begin to fall over from the impact, but Sukuna retaliates by grabbing Yuji's face and preparing to throw him. Todo locks in, hitting the vibroslap multiple times to teleport Yuji around Sukuna as they engage in combat. And as the three are within the activation of Boogie Woogie, Sukuna begins to speak about how Todo is able to adjust the maximum and minimum switches of his technique with each touch, and since he can do this, getting used to the technique is impossible. he could never predict how many times that Todo's going to swap him around the battlefield. However, Sukuna is able to make the best of the situation, noticing that there's a moment where it's definitely possible to predict the switch. We see Todo activate his technique once more, followed by Yuji delivering another strike to Sukuna and sending him flying through a wall and following up alongside Todo. Sukuna flies back and says that this moment where Boogie Woogie can be predicted is the exact moment when Todo's concentration reaches its peak. Sukuna states that Todo's gonna bluff his next technique, pretending not to switch despite touching the weight, and he goes in for a strike. On the other hand, we also see Yuji preparing a strike, imbuing cursed energy into his hands. The swap is then initiated, and we see one of Meimei's crows has entered the scene. Sukuna states that he misinterpreted Todo's attack, and goes to strike the crow expecting Yuji to be there by the time the swap is finished. Todo slams the instrument once more, but Yuji remains where he once was. They never swapped in the first place. Todo laughs and says a plan within another, huh? And Yuji locks in and lands one final black flash. He isn't done here though. Like Kusakabe initially planned on doing this to finish Sukuna off, Yuji uses his claws to dig into Sukuna's heart, giving it his all to rip it out. Sukuna laughs, casting his domain expansion. It's then stated that Sukuna, due to his high level curse energy efficiency and finally being brought down to the same level as Yuta in terms of reserves, can still cast the domain as many times as necessary, as long as his curse technique is available for use. Sukuna begins to cast but sees something. It's stated that Sukuna had seen what his hands had buried, the ghost of the strongest. The chapter ends with what seems to be Gojo staring down Sukuna from a distance. So this is like an edit after I finished editing the video. What I want to touch upon is the second to last page has the chapter end, and then the final page where Gojo appears is the final page of TCB in all these translations. I'm not sure if this could be out of order, but hear me out. It looks like Yuji's about to defeat Sukuna. He lands the black flash, then Sukuna begins to cast the domain expansion as soon as Yuji begins to grab his heart. And then, as they're struggling, Gojo pops up. And Yuji just begins to crush Sukuna's heart and finish the battle basically. It looks as if this could be a scene where Gojo from beyond the grave is saying you have lost, and Yuji finally confirms the victory here and now. Pretty sure this is a trope seen in Demon Slayer, in other manga where, you know, this has happened before in other manga. So maybe the pages could have been flipped around. But that's just me. Maybe that's just only because I want this chapter to end and this fight to end. If you guys noticed throughout all my reviews, and you're soon going to hear me talk about this later in the review, I want this fight to end already. Sukuna's been fighting for 30 chapters. I love Sukuna. I love the fight. I think it's great. But no matter what happens, I'm kind of exhausted. But without further ado, let's get back into the real review. Thank you for listening. So I'll address the elephant in the room. I still think it's an apparition. Gojo and Sukuna have always had this thing going on of what it meant to be the strongest and had opposing purposes, things like that, in a very clear rivalry. Gojo had become so powerful in his own life and led it to a point where he ended up choosing to pursue the purpose of having his students surpass him and lead a generation where nobody will ever be alone again. With all of these characters overcoming Sukuna after the amount of effort that Gojo himself put in to defeat him, it would result in a metaphorical victory for Gojo. Another thing is that Sukuna has been struggling when it comes to Yuji and how Yuji lives as a sorcerer. It's caused him to stop mid-battle and even question himself, coming to the conclusion that he must crush Yuji here and now because Yuji lives for all the sacrifices that were made for him, and nothing could ever stop him from doing this, including Gojo's sacrifice, by the way. Gojo laughing at Sukuna from beyond the grave as Yuji defeats him would be a great conclusion for this ideological battle between Yuji, Gojo, and Sukuna, and really all the characters that sacrifice themselves for Yuji in the endless marathon that is Jujutsu sorcery, as it shows that there's something to be gained from both leaving a legacy and carrying it on, as opposed to just subjecting yourself to pure hedonism without a care for the consequences. I want Gojo to be correct in his sacrifice to reinforce the primary theme of the story in this endless marathon that all these characters have sacrificed themselves for. If he plays any role in defeating Sukuna after his time has passed, it's the same as Nanami coming in to help, Choso resurrecting and coming back, etc. The only difference being Gojo's personal connection to Sukuna, and honestly, it's not strong enough for him to justify taking the dub over Yuji. Also, Gojo just got a 14 chapter fight, Yuji has been sidelined for most of the series, and now after 14-15 chapters of fighting, has finally gotten Sukuna on his last legs. Just not adding up, honestly. The translator of the chapter would also go on to state that, unlike Sukuna and Todo in the previous chapter, when Gojo's shadow is seen, only Sukuna notices it, and there are no footsteps, sounds, anything of the nature. Gojo also has a presence that all acknowledge throughout the series. This is seen when Yuta and Yuji meet for the first time, and everybody thought it was Gojo who had appeared. Sukuna's near death and Gojo getting ready to greet him, that's all I see this as. If Sukuna loses, Gojo does win the metaphorical battle and redefines what strength is in Jujutsu Kaisen, as again, his purpose has surpassed and overcome Sukuna's. To conclude, I think this scene is a representation of how close to death Sukuna is, because he stated that Gojo landing a purple would be fatal to him in 234. We would see Gojo ramp up in 235, and this statement will be followed with Sukuna beginning to feel nervousness for the first time in 1000 years. With Yuji currently ripping out Sukuna's heart after landing a black flash on it and everything else he's done, I think he may have caused the same thing. It's a sign that Sukuna is almost defeated, and I pray this is the case cause man, I'm so tired of the dude. It's exciting week to week, but deep down in the back of my mind, I know I'm going to be happy for this to be over and Sukuna be gone and left behind. I'm also excited for the fact that once Sukuna is defeated, I won't have to sit here and bring these chapters to life week by week anymore. I can just post the panels because people are just going to be talking. I need a chapter where folks are not fighting, okay? I need a break. Speaking of Yuta, some folks think it is Yuta who's returned with the 6 eyes, and you guys know I love Yuta, but I wouldn't be a fan of that either. I take it, but I need to see how it's handled, explained, and I don't even think it's possible, but if there's an explanation for it, I would love to see it. If you've been watching my reviews, you guys know that I want Yuta's return to be the moment that cements our victory in the fight. But Yuta with his own powers and abilities. I mean, does Yuta even need the Limitless to defeat Sukuna at this point? If he can find a way to bring his output to the level of Ryu, he'd be damn near unstoppable compared to the current cast. I love Yuta, but he ain't Kenjaku's level either. Bro lost his best feat in the series after this week's chapter. As for the people who think it's Kenjaku, which honestly is something I'm seeing everywhere, and I think I'm seeing it a little too much, I don't think Kenjaku can even get the 6 eyes. But then again, if we really observe Kenjaku, he's been placing binding vows thousands of times over the span of 1000 years to prepare this arc in the Culling game and create the barriers for it. If anybody's gonna pull off something as stupid as possessing Gojo's body and keeping his 6 eyes, I only think Kenjaku could. And I'm gonna need a really good explanation as to how Kenjaku could extend his body hopping technique to such a level, retain the 6 eyes, come back, all the above. I ain't letting Gege slide with that. A Kenjaku inhabiting Gojo's body would be a fire final boss, because if he can operate Gojo's body at full strength, we could then literally put the students to the test when it comes to surpassing Gojo. Guys, I would also love for Kenjaku to come back like any other, but don't get me wrong. I really think it's only right for his character to conclude by not doing much and passing on his will to Sukuna. Kenjaku never really planned on being a big final boss, the ultimate life form, some super strong fighter, anything like that. All he's ever wanted to do was be a scientist and evolve humanity in the best way he can. I've always seen him as more of a messenger or a guide to what is truly the final battle. But then again, I also agree Kenjaku had a very underwhelming death, but like, it was only fitting for a person like him in my opinion still. Even then, I would love to see him go out grandiose. And then there's that little group of people saying it's Kashimo. Bro, leave my goat alone, just let him rest in peace. I don't think Kashimo coming back or would come back for it would be of any purpose or reason, and he probably just wouldn't anyway. Lastly, I want to address binding vows in the belief that I have when it comes to utilization. I think it depends on the intelligence of the user. With Todo, I'm starting to see too much of a correlation between the most intelligent characters in the series and the usage of binding vows. To throw this out there, I think Gege has a character use them depending on, again, how intelligent they are overall. Sukuna has insane intelligence. People will say Hakari's only smart in battle, but okay, show me a 17-year-old running a massive successful underground fighting business without lifting a single finger. There's Kenjaku, and now there's Todo. Now, intelligence is not knowledge or wisdom, so don't make the mistake of me saying that Hakari knows more than Kusakabe or these other characters. I'm just saying, the characters I've listed have the ability to think of the best ways on the spot to optimize the situations that they're in and reinforce their high-level decision making with binding vows. This is only a hypothesis though, but it's just a correlation I'm seeing too much. Take it with a grain of salt. Anyways, you guys know how this goes. I'll probably make an extra video on this chapter talking about it because why not? And with that said, let me know if you enjoyed this video and mention something I may have missed or should focus on for the discussion video this week. I'm not sure. I don't even know if I want to talk about Gojo returning because I think I said what I needed to say in this video, but if you guys want me to talk about it anyway, I can do it, trust me. With that said, I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day, guys. Peace out.